Hey, Bill Friel here with another entry to my video chapbook. This piece titled Undiscovered Country. It's an old piece that I wrote many years ago, but in my retirement I've picked it back up and reworked it. It's about 1,500 words, less than 15 minutes of viewing. So, without further dawdling, let's take a little trip to Undiscovered Country. Perturbed beyond believing, Jamie don't see the browns in the fall grass. She don't see the leaning barn, the mud-pocked soy, the cloud-beaded sky, the old lady in the farmhouse yard watching, the volunteer corn with leaves like crooked arms waving. None of that shows for Jamie. But smoke along the windshield, the spider web crack in it, her good hand bony knuckled on the iron-colored steering wheel, her bad hand like a cauliflower top tucked between her legs. She's all about that. And bearded Miller, working a jack handle, inching up the corner of a seam-torn trailer home, the little trailer sitting off the gravel drive in the wind where the high water pushed it. "What you got there, Millie boy?" Jamie yells. "You got her going good, do you?" Miller lets his knees buckle like a horse looking for a lie down. He hits the dirt hard. "Jamie," he cries. Jamie snorts. She drops her cigarette by the pedals and smashes it. She's thinking, chucklehead, frog eater. We had got us up, Miller. We had got us up and out of Indiana and to this new place. There are jobs for us here, Miller, and a better life. So do you give that a consideration? Can I feel a rising up of us together? Oh, hell no, it's Miller in the bed every morning. The Price is Right or the Wheel of Fortune, a can of beer and a cigarette. And why do you laugh when they lose, Miller? Then she hears her mama's voice. He ain't no chucklehead for nothing. Miller rises slowly, brushes off his knees and starts for the truck. He slow walks to the cab, then presses his face against the windshield. There is one dark eye, a brown matted beard in the palm of a hand. Miller says, "Whether," his voice rising, "'tis noble to suffer." Jamie looks away. Fool. She remembers the day they passed through a college town and stopped in a field full of cars and striped tents. Miller took up with a group of kids dressed in purple tights and blousy shirts. By evening, everyone was stumbling drunk on sweet wine and plastic cups, and the kids were doubling over, laughing at Miller twist their lines. They called him Indiana Hemlock. Miller turns his face on the windshield. He looks at Jamie with his other eye and puts both palms on the glass. "Jamie," he says, softly. Jamie looks into Miller's dark, well-deep eyes. She remembers, too, the night she first thought those eyes were shiny with promise. She and Miller were watching old Rex race around a dirt figure eight. Miller was newly released from the county hospital and talked about himself in a slow, quiet, big-worded way. He talked about the drugs they gave him to help him with his sickness and how he quit them because they made him feel tired and sad. He talked about a small college he'd gone to and an old-timey fella he liked and kept calling Big Bill. As he talked, he mixed in rhymes about sleep and dying that swirled around Jamie like a sad music, a music that rose up with the clouds of blue exhaust into the lights around the track. When Miller said he saw those lights in Jamie's eyes, Jamie felt a brightness in herself like she'd never known. She was not yet 18 and hated school. The kids called her Collie Top, and she was fighting with her mama. Her mama told her not to quit school. You'll never get a good job that way. And her mama didn't like her going out with Miller either. He's too old for you and a chucklehead. Up and down, up and down. You're just as late as booty call for all that'll get you. Don't you ever say that, Jamie cried. She cried because at the track that night, listening to Miller's words, Jamie was sure she'd been delivered from her slow-worded, gimpy self. She felt grown and fitted in with things and thought that a life with Miller could always be that way. "Oh, hell," Jamie Miller yells. He's waving his arms around his head like he's trying to move away a swarm of bees. "Roll down this window." "I'll not," she says. Miller drops his arms, makes his hands into fists, shows them to Jamie, then starts pounding on the roof of the cab. Jamie looks up and can see each time where the fists hit. For the sake of the truck, she rolls the window down halfway. Miller stops pounding. He says, "I have scraped paint off the cables of the Golden Gate. I will give my all for a full day's work when I am able." "Ha!" Jamie laughs. Miller puts his forehead on the top rim of the windshield. He rolls his head from side to side on the glass edge. The times, he says, are out of joint. Suddenly, there is a crash. The little trailer has fallen through the jack. Pink insulation shows where the metal sprang away. Jamie rams her shoulder into the door and jumps out. "We had us a hope when we came here, Miller." Miller puts his hands to his ears and walks to the front of the truck. He lays back on the hood and spreads his arms out. "I've been sick." "You are sick and you are weak." Miller rolls over and does some push-ups on the truck. Though he claims a disability, Miller's weakness is not in his arms. He walks around the fender and steps in front of Jamie. He is a full head taller than her and heavy. She takes a step backwards. Miller says, "I saw money last night you were hiding." He sticks his hand out flat, palm up, and stabs Jamie in the stomach with his pointed fingers. Jamie doesn't answer. She knows what this moment is. This is her time to ease into that old rocking chair that is her acquiescent self, to give in to Miller, or to run home and hide in the safety of her mama. Ah, her sweet mama. How she always brought Jamie warmth from the cold that so often blew into her life. Jamie listens to the sound her mama's voice would make. Miller grabs at the lip of Jamie's pocket. Jamie thinks she should take a stand and fight Miller for the money, but she knows she would lose. She hands him the bills. Miller pauses, counting the money, then jams the bills into his back pocket. He looks at Jamie long and in silence. Then he climbs into the truck, slams shut the door, and turns the ignition. He shouts over the idling engine, "Say you're sorry, you can come." "Like hell," Jamie says. Miller fiddles hard with the shifter and grinds the old truck into gear. He looks at Jamie and screws up a grin. "It's a real deep pond, little princess." Jamie looks into Miller's face and in a second thinks of the story Miller told her about the drowning princess, so lost and sad that she slipped off a path and fell into a pond, but quickly found joy in what seemed to be a miracle. How her billowing gown seemed to hold her up in the water, and in that joy she filled the air with song and color, only to be slowly pulled down by the weight of her dress. And down she went, down into the dark green water, her dress closing around and up and over her into a forever night. Miller bolts upright. He guns the engine and throws the gears into reverse. The tires spin madly, throwing stones and dirt up. He hits the gears again and takes off, leaving the gravel drive and leaping onto the road. He goes through the gears and disappears around a turn. Jamie jams her fists into her pockets. Every muscle in her body is shaking. "You all right?" Jamie turns and sees the old woman from the farmhouse walking toward the wire fence at the edge of the yard. She's wearing a sweater and an old print dress. Jamie says, "Well, I reckon so. He coming back?" I don't know. Well, the old lady says, come on up. Jamie is still shaky, stepping over the stony drive, then through the vine-covered gate. She walks through the muddy yard and then stops at the corner of the house. A pot of faded geraniums sits on the broken back steps. The old lady has gone inside and comes back out, walking down the steps and carrying a deep wicker basket. She stops in front of a clothesline and drops the basket and unravels an old quilt. She throws the quilt over the line and clothespins it. The woman drawls, you two always carry on like that? Lately seems like he your husband? We ain't married. The woman reaches into her pocket and brings out a short pair of scissors. There are strings and tatters on the quilt she begins snipping gently at. She picks the ends off and flicks them into the wind. They fall from her fingers and disappear. As Jamie watches, she thinks about all the things in her life she wishes she could snip off and flick away, like Miller, like her bad hand, like every day she spent at school. Jamie says, I could use a drink of water. The old lady stops snipping and gives Jamie a once-over. Then she turns her attention back to the quilt. She says, all right, go on in. The wind is whistling through the pipes the clothesline is hooked onto. Jamie listens a moment, then opens the back door. She looks inside and, seeing a dark kitchen, begins to sink into a worry about what she won't find tomorrow, that night, or in the next 10 minutes. Then she closes her eyes and thinks of herself, falling and tumbling like threads falling, but falling to a place risen and grown and fitted into a hope of her own, at least as good as the one she had with Miller. This is a new kind of thought for Jamie, unlike one she's ever had before, and it startles her. She thinks, ain't that some shit? Them threads and all that hoping, falling and rising? Jamie pulls again on the screen door and the rusty spring hums in a low harmony. Stepping through, the old door closes and smacks her on her backside. Well, that's that. That concludes our little trip to Undiscovered Country and life as it might be there. So, as I said before, I thank you for viewing and listening to my video chapbook. And in the event we never meet again, I will leave you with this final word, and that word is later.